Back when I was first working as a stagehand at the start of the 1990s, I had a colleague whose driver's license said Michael, but whom we all knew as Woody. I'm not sure that Woody was a nickname that Michael had chosen for himself. I'm not sure it was his preferred nickname. In fact, the evidence suggests that it kind of was not. Now, the way that touring rock and roll shows work is that there's a core crew that travels with the band from city to city. And then when they arrive in a particular location, a particular city, there's a local crew that meets them and rounds out the crew for the day. And the two crews, touring crew and local crew, meet in the loading dock and they shake hands and they tell one another their names. Hi, I'm Martin. I'm Chris. I'm Sarah. And in this moment of meeting, Woody would tell the touring crew that his name was Mike. And it didn't matter. Half an hour later, the entire crew was calling him Woody. The name somehow fit. The lore, the legend, the story is that the origin of Woody's nickname was not a kind one, that it in fact was a pretty cruel one. He was so called Woody because, like wood, his head was kind of thick. If that's true, then I really regret not honoring his wish to be called Mike. I really regret, even if it's not true, I regret not honoring the name that he chose for himself. I've really come to believe that we should honor the names people choose for themselves. Today in Scripture, we meet a guy by the name of Simon. But somewhere along the way, somewhere in Simon's life, people have started calling him Rocky or the Rock. This maybe gets lost in English translations where Simon goes from being Simon to being Peter. And it is possible to forget that Peter is a nickname full of meaning. This is more obvious if we were reading the Bible, say, in French, where Simon becomes Pierre, which is also a word which means rock. It would be more obvious if we were reading the Bible in the original ancient Greek, where Simon becomes Petros, which is rock. And it would be obvious if we were listening to Simon and Jesus in conversation in this ancient scene, where they're speaking Aramaic to one another. Jesus says to Simon, "You are Cephas, and on this Cephas I will build my church." There are some English translations that try to preserve this by transliterating Cephas as Cephas, and there are others that try to preserve it by translating this as Simon, you are rock, and on this rock I will build my church. Here's my question for this morning. Much as Woody had a driver's license that said Michaels, the Rock, or Rocky, has a driver's license that says Simon. And I wonder, does Simon feel kind of like Woody did about his nickname? Does Simon wish that people would stop calling him the Rock? Does he wish that people would call him by his real and his chosen name? Now, it may seem like that question has an obvious answer. Today, so many churches are named St. Rocks, named St. Peter, including what is probably the most famous church in the world, certainly one of the most famous churches in the world. And we know that the Rock went on to become the first pope, the founder of the church. Who wouldn't want to be named Rock? But bear in mind how we speak of rocks and how we speak of stones elsewhere in Scripture, elsewhere in the Gospel. The scene that we hear today is unique to Matthew, where Jesus speaks of the rock in this fashion. In other places, we hear that a rock is something that you trip over. Here is a stumbling block. We hear that a rock is something that is tied around your neck as punishment. Here is a millstone. Elsewhere, we hear that a rock or a stone is something that is thrown at someone as a means of execution. Think of the woman who was caught in adultery. We hear that a stone is something that you are not going to give to your child when they want bread. It's a thing that no one wants to eat. And think of the parable that we heard, I think, just last month. What is rocky soil like? Rocky soil is the place where the seed just won't grow. The seed catches for a little while. The rocky soil receives it enthusiastically, but there's just no depth. The roots can't go down, and so it doesn't grow there. And given what we know about Simon, given what we know in particular about the Passion story, he says he's going to stay with Jesus, and then when the violence of empire comes, he runs away. We could very much understand this nickname as a shot at him. Or you're the rocky one. You are the one who enthusiastically grabbed onto the seed, but when things got tough, you fled. And so we can well imagine that Simon flinches when he hears this nickname, that like Woody, he wishes people would call him by his real name. And we can imagine that he flinches in this scene. He is having this extraordinary encounter, this extraordinary series of weeks and months with Jesus. And Jesus has just said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon." And Simon is beaming with pride. And then Jesus says, "You are the rock." And in that moment, Simon's shoulders just slump. Because he thought in Jesus and in Jesus's friends, he had found someone who could love him just as he is, who liked him just as he is, who didn't need to tear him down in order to build themselves up, who wouldn't call him that awful nickname, the Rock. "You're the Rock," says Jesus, and Simon tries to put on a brave face. He tries to keep on smiling, but we can see the pain in his eyes. But then Jesus goes on, "You're the rock, and on this rock I will build my church." And Simon has this moment of holy confusion and wonder. He says, wait a minute. I thought to be a rock was to be hard. A rock was to hurt people. A rock was to be thick. A rock was to be a place in which things couldn't grow. Is it possible that to be a rock is to be the foundation, to be the thing on which everything grows? This is a moment of wonder for Simon. And I wonder if Jesus didn't do the same thing one day with Woody. If he came to him and said, "Hey, you are Woody," and Woody said, "Yeah, I know. That's what everybody calls me." And then Jesus said, "You are Woody. You are the tree of life in which possibility blooms." What if that happened? And what if Jesus does that with you and me too? I don't know if you have a nickname that you don't want, or if you used to as a child. But I know all of us have names that we wouldn't have chosen and that we don't want. Stories about how we are hard to love, or we always make some critical mistake, or we are hard to trust. I don't know what story you might have, what name you might have. And I think Jesus comes to you and says, "Oh, that name you've been carrying, that name of hurt, the name about how you are perhaps full of grief, that is the thing that permits you to be full of empathy. All those mistakes you have made are the things that permit you to learn with this fecundity and to share this learning with others. All of your limitations are what allows you to embrace possibility. Your name is something joyous and full of all of these stories you would have never guessed at." This is what Jesus says to Simon. "You're the rock. You're the rock, and on this rock I will build my church." And Simon is amazed. "Yeah," he says, "yeah, I am the rock." And he starts laughing at the wonder, at the transformation, at the reversal of it all, just laughing with joy. And his friends, Jesus' friends, are all around. They start laughing with him. They're not sure why they are laughing, but sometimes that just happens when you're with your friends. You laugh because everyone else is laughing. You howl and you say, what are we laughing about? Maybe this is the moment that Jesus remembers, this moment of reversal, of transformation, of joyous possibility when Simon became the rock. Maybe he's remembering this moment when later on he says, the stone that the builders have rejected has become the chief cornerstone.